What is up, everybody? For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Clint Cascio with Dropping Hammers Outdoors on YouTube. And today I'm going to talk about calling and the importance of calling. I've seen this over the years while I've turkey hunted. I've been turkey hunting, over a decade, and it took me a couple years to get the hang of it, but once I did, it was off to the races. And throughout those years of trying to figure some things out, I noticed sometimes I would be calling to a bird and mess up a call, and that sucker would shut up and he would walk away. Or sometimes I would be calling to a bird and he wouldn't gobble, and then I would switch to call and he would gobble. I would use a different call and he would gobble. So what I'm saying is turkeys can definitely understand the realism of a call. And for me to go in depth in that, in those situations where, say I was using a mouth call and the bird wouldn't gobble or would gobble every so often, but then I switched to a different call and he would gobble. Then when I'm hitting that call repeatedly, he's gobbling every time. And the reason why is because it sounds more real. It sounds better. He likes it more. And that's why calling is so important. So if you have subpar calling, you're going to get subpar results. If you have poor calling, you're going to have poor results. If you have good calling or great calling, then you're going to get better results. So I leave my vest in my house where I can see it and where I walk by it all the time, and I will pick up those calls and I will run them, especially those that last 30 days before turkey season starts and I go to my first hunt. I'm messing with those things all the time, and that's why. And it seems silly, but a lot of times when you're working a bird, especially a stubborn older bird, and this really goes for people who want to play on public land or people who are playing with pressured birds or older birds, they aren't stupid. You have to sound good. You have to sound real. Now, with a dumber bird, you don't have to sound great, and you can get the job done with a 2-year-old. But once they get up a little bit older, it takes, a good call, a good sound to get that bird to come to you. Now, I want you to think for a second. If you're a tom turkey and you believe that this noise you're hearing is a hen, what is going to stop you from coming in? Nothing. You're going to go to that hen. You're going to go over there. And so when people are calling to a bird and you're ripping the call and you mess up the call, you do something like that. You screw up on that call. Now, while you were working that bird for however long you worked him, and he just heard that, that's you telling him, I'm not real. Your job is to convince that bird that you're real. His job is to figure out that you are or aren't real. So that's the game that you're playing. Sometimes it's said that, you could say you're just trying to get the turkey to come in, whatever, but that's what it boils down to, is when he believes you're real, he's coming in. And when you have subpar calling or not so good calling and you are calling to these turkeys, you're going to run into situations where he's not gobbling as much, or you heard him gobbling his head off and then he stops gobbling when you call. This is also going to be a situation where you're hunting and you have birds hang up on you a lot. I could tell you in the past 3 years or more, not very often do I have birds hang up on me. Not very often. And to not bang on my chest, the only reason is because I practice with my calls. I do a lot of more softer calling with my mouth call, which I use for tighter, closer range and roost hunts. And then my slate call, I use that for, reaching out there a little bit further, trying to locate birds, and I can sit down and I can get softer on it if I want to. But most of the time when I'm when I'm, ripping that call, I'm going to know pretty quick if that bird's convinced or not. And if you convince him, he's going to come in. But I could tell you, I've had a lot of battles with birds where, you get 2-3 hour battles with these birds. And this is going to happen with older birds. It's going to happen with, pressured birds. It's not going to be instant. And there's factors that play into that a lot, like terrain features, where you're at, where you set up, how easy it is for the bird to get to you. But from just a calling aspect, the realism of your calling is what is going to sell that bird on whether or not he should come into you. Now, another part of it too is the volume, okay? When I am watching turkey videos, I will see people all the time, man, this bird will be 50 yards or closer, or, even maybe a little bit further. And they are hammering that call, man. Like they are just freaking hammering on it. And I've literally watched the videos where when the guy calls, the bird goes like this. Like he goes like this. It's too loud. It's scaring the turkeys. Now, 80% or more of what turkeys do is soft calling. Soft calling. So, when you get the closer a bird gets to you, the quieter you want to get a lot of times. The only time where I'm going to break that rule is if I'm getting quiet and he's walking away. Then I'm going to sit on the call and I'll get louder. So a turkey can hear that at 80 yards, if not further. And I'm barely putting any pressure on that. So you don't need to be loud to get that turkey to come in. And actually, the softer you go, the easier it is to sound more realistic and the more you can get away with, okay? Oftentimes when I've got a bird gobbling, he's hammering. When I'm calling, most of the time he's gobbling, but I could tell he's an older bird and he's just not convinced on whether or not he wants to come in. I want that joker to barely hear me. I can't tell you how many birds that I've played that game with, and when they can barely hear me, it just breaks them, man. They're like, and if you think about it, if you're talking to somebody, you're talking to a girl, if you're a guy, you're talking to a girl, and you start to barely be able to hear her, you're like, dang, well, this conversation is going to end here if I don't move closer. It's an instinct, but it's also a turkey thing that I believe a turkey knows how close he is to another turkey based off how loud the sound is. And I also believe that when a hen is calling really loud, that's her saying, stay where you are, I'm coming to you. And I've seen that turkey hunting. I've seen turkeys, rip really loud yelps and raspy yelps, and then a turkey will gobble and she will go to him. I've seen that so many times. And so when you're playing this game with that bird, you want to keep that in mind. I mean, you're trying to convince him to come to you, and one of your biggest weapons is definitely going to be to get quieter as he's coming in. Now, another thing is box calls. Box calls are easy to run, but they're easy to mess up on. And they're not always easy to sound good on. So mouth calls, they're the same thing. You're either good on them or you're not good on them. And they're easy to sound bad on. Mouth calls are probably the number one way to make yourself a person who is having birds hang up, or it's harder to convince that bird. I mean, it's an instrument, and if you are not sounding the right way, that bird is not going to be convinced. But if you can, then he will be convinced. Now, in my book, the easiest call to run and the best call to sound good on, or easiest call to sound good on, is by far a good pot call. Now, they have ceramics, they have glass, they have slate calls, they even have aluminum. They have all sorts of stuff now. Now, your goal as a hunter is just to find something that you can sound good on. The calls that I had, I've ran through probably 10 or more calls in my life. And it took a little while to find one that I really liked and I know works great. And my go-to slate call, which I'm not going to say what that is, I finally found it after quite a few years. I have my go-to mouth call. I will say one of the ones that I use is a Woodhaven Toxic Orange. The other one, I'm not going to say what that one is. And to stop for a second, I predominantly use my slate call. And the reason why is because I can sound good on it and I'm more consistent with it. I sound better with it. Now, my mouth call, from a 100 yard in range, 120 yard in range, I'm good on a mouth call. Something I'm not good on a mouth call with is ripping those real heavy, loud notes that travel. And you know, that's mainly for locating turkeys. I'm not good at that. I know my boundary there. So I use mouth calls mainly for softer calling to work birds in that 120 in yard range. And then when I'm playing with them out past that, that's where the slate call comes in. And it's important to know your boundaries with what you're using, because you know, when you have a bird gobbling, no matter how far he is, you can get closer. You should be able to, right? As long as you can use terrain to get closer to the bird. But for me, you know, I'm not that great on a mouth call, so I know my limits with it, and I will, you know, rely a little bit more on my slate call. So to get this video wrapped up, some of the things that I want to press a little bit is practicing with calls. Practicing is a must. I pick these things up and all the time I'm practicing with them. Number two, you get opinions from people on how good your calling is. How good do I sound on this mouth call? How good do I sound on this box call or this slate call? Get good, honest opinions and figure out what you sound good on. And thirdly, let the turkey tell you what he likes. Like I said, I've called to a turkey with a mouth call and gotten no reaction when I knew he was there. And then I'll pick up a slate call and I'll rip the slate call and then he gobbles. And then I'm like, okay, well, he's obviously likes this slate call more. So, you know, I only carry those 2 calls in my vest, maybe 3 an extra mouth call. You do not need an artillery of calls to kill turkeys. And is it a good thing to sometimes switch it up? Yes. Sometimes I'm working a bird and I switch up my calling. It's just like if I'm afraid of getting caught moving, I might pop a mouth call in and see if he likes it. But if he doesn't like it and he's not gobbling to it, I will switch back quickly. So you want to practice, you want to find out what you're good on. And a third thing is, the closer the bird gets, the lower you want to be, the lower your volume wants to be. By the time that turkey breaks 100 yards, 80 yards, and you're trying to finish him, all I'm ever doing is just soft calling most of the time. And see, this is why practicing is so important, is because, see, if I'm trying to do this soft calling in this bird, see those first 2 notes? I didn't like those notes that much. Now, if I'm working a bird and he's closing but he's not convinced, and I screw up a call like that, that's you telling him, you know, I'm not real. And that is all these big old toms need to know that the gig is up and it's time to go. So, practicing your calling, figuring out what you're good on, and using a lower frequency the closer that the turkey gets to you. This is the stuff that is going to help you kill more turkeys. If anybody has any questions, just leave them in the comments, and go check out some of the turkey videos and deer videos I have up on Dropping Hammers Outdoors. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Have a good one.